Peggy 18.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are the story team behind The Blood of Dawnwalker, and we are so excited to talk to you about the game and the world of The Blood of Dawnwalker. We will give you a little glimpse into this world, into the lore, into the legends and myths of this little interesting nook of the world. Tonight, we prepared a few short stories. And I have read them all, but you guys have not seen each other's work, so we'll have natural reactions. Before we move on, I guess there are two things to say. First one is that I feel like I need to address the elephant in the room. This is not our actual office. We don't usually write in leather-bound journals as much as we'd like. And then the second thing is that there should be one more person here, our dear colleague Magda Kucenty, but she's on maternity leave. So hi, Magda. You will get to experience her writing in the game. And if you read Polish, she's put out some magnificent books and short stories. So do yourself a favor and Google them. And I think without further ado, we might as well move on to the main attraction, which is the short stories.
All right.
Sounds good?
Yep.
Okay,
Sounds good.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll start with Piotrek. So.
Okay. Right. Okay, so I have my story in this leather-bound journal, so to speak. Okay, so yeah, let's get the whole thing moving. Pigs for slaughter. The smell of blood was driving him crazy. It was ever present, pushing its way into his nostrils, making him want to leave this place as soon as possible. But he had to give it to Andrei. It was a good spot for the secret meeting. The Vrakhiri would never think to look for them in a butcher's shop. Prince Boris looked at his loyal subjects. Muggers, thieves, smugglers, murderers in most cases too. They were not good men by any standards. And if caught by the city guards, they would surely do their final dance on the end of a hemp rope. They were all local lads, Svartrau born and bred. They knew the city, they lived on its cobbled streets. They sometimes behaved like monsters, true, but they were not real monsters, like those who took over Vale Sangura, including the capital and, most pertinently, its back alleys. The captains of the street gangs gathered in the butcher's shop to listen to the man who'd pushed his way to the top of the city's underworld. Because Prince Boris, ruler of the Svartrau scum, had a plan. He glanced at Andrei, his right-hand man, who nodded in reassurance. My friends, Boris started, his voice firm. Brensis thinks that Svartrau is his. He thinks that everyone will bow their heads and listen to the bullshit the Vrakhiri spew. He is wrong. This city belongs to us, and we will save it from those leeches. We know heroes, Prince, someone interjected. No, we're not. Heroes fight for a higher purpose, and then they die the rather nasty deaths, Boris replied, getting a few chuckles from the man. He continued, his face now very serious. We are businessmen. We get things done. We take care of the city, of its people, for a price. And was all working just fine until those fucking bloodsuckers came and ruined a good thing. So I say, we take what's ours once more. I told you to bring all your silver. We can use it to make weapons. We will not battle Brensis openly, no. We will do what we do best. Search for an opportunity and backstab these damned... Suddenly, the door to the butcher's shop burst open, and 3 dark figures walked in, blades drawn. Blood guards! Someone screamed. It wasn't necessary. They all could see the plate armor, the red goblet crests, the demonic masks hiding the faces of Vrakhiri's most loyal lapdogs. Without a word, The soldiers rushed inside and started slashing. But Prince Boris and his men were not some common street thugs. They had survived many ambushes and back-alley frays in their time. They could still win this. The Blood Gods were tough and scary, but they were a band of most vicious murderers and cutthroats in Velsangora. Svartrau was their city. They earned it by cutting, maiming, bleeding, and killing. Hope. There was still hope. He knew that he only had to stay calm, organize his men, and his thoughts trailed off as something sharp was stuck deep into his left shoulder, just below the neck. He wanted to turn around, but his body wouldn't listen. Like a puppet without strings, Boris fell to his knees. Andrei appeared in his peripheral vision, bloodied butcher's cleaver in his right hand. "Sorry, my prince," he said, a nasty smile appearing on his face. "But as you said, we're businessmen. And all that silver you gathered, I've got a buyer who'll pay any price for it." Boris cast a wide glance around him and saw Blood Gods killing his men one by one. No pardon was offered, no respite, just death. Andrei leaned over him and whispered, "They said we should try and capture you, so they could put up a show with you in the lead. But we are friends, Boris, so look away." Boris did what he was asked. He no longer had the will to fight. He just wanted it to be over. He looked at the pig carcass that was hanging from the ceiling, its eyes dead, empty. And then, just like the pig, he met his fate at the end of a butcher's cleaver.
Ooh, nasty way to go.
Gnarly.
So, what do you think?
I like it. I think I really enjoy like the little act of courtesy at the very end. You know, when Prince Boris gets the mercy kill from Andrei.
Right.
So because clearly, you know, the trust was betrayed, but there's still honor.
Silver lining.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure it's silver, but
Yeah, it's
some
bad. Silver
sort
is
of-
bad, so it can't be silver.
some sort of lining, and I have a suspicion as to who might be the mysterious buyer behind that transaction, but that is probably best left unsaid.
Let's keep some secrets.
for for the players to find out. Can you tell us more about the city of Svartrau?
Sure. So Svartrau is the main hub of civilization in Velsangora. It is its capital. It's full of life. It's full of secrets as well, and it is where the Vrakhiri decided to make their, so to speak, seat of power. Right. So this is where Brancis rules in the castle of Greifberg. And we hope that players will, get to see the city in all its splendor, and will look anywhere and everywhere to see what they can find, what kind of quests, what kind of stories are there. I think we're really proud of the city itself.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Sounds like it has a seedy underbelly too.
Of course it does.
So will players get to encounter this Andrei fellow?
If they choose some, story paths, if they are willing to go deeper into the city and risk their lives, probably, maybe they will meet Andrei and even talk to him. We'll see.
And prove they are the better businessmen.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, Prince Boris, rest in peace.
Yeah. Go for it.
I wanted to ask about the Blood Guards, because they are very interesting to me as a concept.
Right. So Blood Guards are the elite city guards, let's call them. Well, not really city guards, because they can be encountered in the whole valley, and they are created by the Vrakhiri by bounding them to their will. They are fed a lot of Vrakhiri blood to make them more powerful. They are quicker, they are more resilient, but they're also addicted to the blood. So this is, this case of a deal that, yes, you will get the power, but you will also be, a slave. This is what some of the people who are opposing Vrakhiri, they call Blood Gods, the blood slaves as well.
slaves.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And speaking of blood, I think that's a good segue to get into Ariana's story, which features it quite
yes.
prominently.
That's an excellent segue because now we are leaving the city and we are going into the swamp.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Take it away.
A beautiful understanding. Dead of winter, the swamp had frozen over. Sonia listened to her footsteps hitting the path to the monster's lair, the only sound breaking the night's silence. It was her last chance to come here before her brother threw his life away. She took a turn by the mangled tree and, for a second, she halted, mesmerized. Under the cover of fresh snow flickering in the moonlight, slumbers chiseled deer and hares. Flowers bloomed, lining the garden path, their hard petals catching the icy flakes. This place was wrong. It was a dissonance. It was gorgeous. The elders called this mire cursed. They spoke of darkness dwelling within, bringing ruin to any who wandered in. People liked to believe in evil. It made everything pleasantly clear. A monster was a monster. It could be slain or feared. Simple. But monsters had no concept of beauty. Callias clearly did. By the door to the ancient tomb adorned with paintings of heroes of old stood a carved stone slab, and on it sat a young couple, gazing into each other's eyes. And though they too were mere statues snowed over and cold, Sonia stood there, watching them for a moment, amazed by how lifelike they seemed, how genuinely in love. His finger brushing her cheek, her dress spilling onto the ground. A masterwork. "Who are you?" a voice sounded behind her. Sonia turned around. It was him, Callias. Even in the pale moonlight, he looked nothing like the ghoul elders had described. Where was the deathly pallor of his skin, the eyes black like hellish pits? He stood there, mouth curved in a faint smile, and nothing in his eyes but a flicker of curiosity. When was the last time anyone had spoken to him, she wondered, and listened to his answer rather than the voice of their own fear. "I'm Sonia," she said, trembling but not yet from fright, merely the cold. "I've come to talk to you before my brother comes to bargain." A drop of the Vrakir's blood to save his child from ravaging fever. In return, all the blood flowing through his veins. It was a deal well known in the nearby lands, and every now and then, when there was no other cure, it was a deal taken. Callias took a few steps, circling her, watching her. "You know my price." Sonia swallowed, her breath hitched. "Yes, but I wish to know why. Why take a life?" He'd been human once. He had a soul, but they let him forget. "What else would you offer me?" Callias inquired. "What else would you want?" she asked in return, something she was sure no one had ever done before. Callias brushed the snow off the statue's shoulder. He squeezed it between his fingers, but it didn't melt, only crumbled into white dust to be blown away by the wind. "Do you not believe in monsters, Sonia?" "Not all of them, no." Callias reached his hand out to her. "Then come, let's find out what I may yet need." His fingers ended with claws, not like a wolf's or a bear's, straight and sharp, unnatural. Sonia hesitated. The cold air bit her lungs with each breath. "Ah," Callias put his hand down, following it with his gaze. Why did she let fear take over? Why did he give up so quickly, not granting her the time to beat down the fright? But he did not turn her away just yet. Instead, he motioned at her to follow him into the tomb of the ancient hero, into his lair. She fell in his step, and as they walked, Callias hummed a quiet tune. The melody echoed through the tomb, uncanny. He led her to a room lit by candles in exquisite holders, where full shelves overflowed with books. Little statues of birds perched upon an iron chandelier, and sconces lining the walls. In death's silent place, he clearly yearned for life. And Sonia's heart clenched. How terrifyingly lonely. Callias walked up to the table to an open book filled with bizarre symbols and patterns. He ran his claw over the page gently, as not to rip the parchment. Who am I then, if not a monster? Do tell. One bird figurine sat at the edge of the table. Chiseled to the feather, yes, but with bizarre reddish vines crawling up its feet, entangling its little body. A man who believes he is one, but he hasn't always, has he? Callias smiled and closed the book. Come closer, then, he said. Show me that you see that man in me, that you truly do wish to understand me. He extended his hand once more, and this time Sonia could not refuse. It was as cold as the snowflakes clinging to his fingers. Callias reached to her face, and his claw nicked the delicate skin. Just barely, just enough for a thin streak of red to mar the pale cheek. Now fear stirred, deep within her. But she wouldn't give in. She would find a way to remind him what they'd let him forget. And, as if reading her mind, Callias whispered, "Kiss me, Sonia. I wish to remember how it feels." She laid a trembling kiss on his icy lips, but as she pulled away, the cold didn't leave. It spread through her bones, her joints suddenly stiff, her hands, her legs, they would not obey. They would not move. Callias stepped back and appraised her for a moment, then took her arm and raised it, opening her palm. And the arm stayed that way. Sonia screamed. She cried, but the tomb remained bathed in silence. The Vrakir circled Sonia again, adjusting here, adjusting there. An artist at work. At the very end, content, he came to face her once more. It was subtle, but there it was in her features. A little bit of shock, a little bit of fear, and finally, understanding.
Your stories are always so deliciously gothic, and this is no exception. I always wondered, and I don't think I've ever asked you, like, what are your inspirations? Like, what were your formative reads that led you down this dark path?
Oh, probably a lot of emo literature that I should not mention.
Can you give examples, or is it too embarrassing to?
They would be too embarrassing, but I can say that I liked songs by Evanescence, Nightwish.
I guess it paints the
picture without going too deep into the rabbit hole.
Well, let's move on. I don't want to polish.
Actually, I just realized that you have written a lot of the Vrakiri in our game, right?
Yeah.
So maybe except for Bakir, who was written by Magda, you had your part in almost each of them. Do you have your favorite?
My favorite is Lakra. That's really what a surprise, right? But I didn't actually choose, say that I wanted to have the Vrakiri. We just gravitated towards each other, I guess. So, and I'm glad because it was fun.
But I have to say that what I loved about your story is all those little bits when you interjected Sonia's thoughts when she was trying to humanize Callias all the time, like from the, because it's a typical vampire story, gothic vampire story, right, from the 18th century and 19th century, that you have all those stories like Dracula, like Castle of Otranto, when you romanticize the vampires. They are, beings of sexuality, but also of danger and so on. And here, it's lovely how Callias, he knows exactly what she is trying to do, and he has nothing of it, but he's playing the game. He's, of course, I forgot how to be human. I'm so sad right now, so sorry.
I think the alternative title for this short story could be Ignoring Multiple Red Flags. Another one.
I was thinking when you said that we could use some kind of archetype for a character in this short story, I would say a Darwin Award winner.
Because she knew she could change him. So.
She wanted to change the bad boy.
That rarely succeeds.
A for effort.
Before we move on, I want to ask one question. Well, will players get to explore that magnificent, though unsettling cave?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, there are swamps in the game, and if you go to the swamp, who knows what you'll find there.
Okay, well, that's a promise that might be fulfilled at a later point. But now I think it's a good moment to move on to our next story by Piotrek.
Yeah, so my story is titled The Monument. Master Ivan was bustling about the workshop, humming a happy tune under his breath. It had been a very good day. He'd secured a new contract for the Kniaz's army, and this time the pay was going to be even better. Valkyrie blood might leave a bitter taste in the mouth, but Ivan couldn't deny his family go well off drinking it. And family was the most important thing. The journeyman and all 3 apprentices were already gone. Master Ivan was just about to leave too when he heard footsteps approaching. At such late hour, it could only mean trouble, and he knew what kind of trouble. "You're a Manumit, are you not?" he asked. Ivan knew they'd come. After all, his arrowheads and spearheads had been piercing through the rebels' heads and hearts for quite some time now. "You've got that right," the man said, smiling. "But my business here is not what you might be thinking." Ivan knew his voice. He knew it very well. The man stepped out of the shadow. He was tall and lanky, dressed in rags. If need be, after killing Ivan, he could step out of the workshop, take a seat across the street, and pretend to be a blind beggar. Sfatra was full of such people, and the guards would not even bother to ask questions. "Well, if you aren't here to kill me," Ivan said, "then I guess there is only one other option, and I refuse. I'd sooner shove my own arrowheads up my arse than join you lot. We don't expect you to grab a sword and charge at the barricades," he said. "Nor would we like you to provide Kniaz Brensis with faulty weapons or anything like that. We want you to do well. I want you to do well. We will pay handsomely, and you will provide us with a small batch of your finest work. No one will know. And when Brensis is finally gone, we will remember you did your part." "Well," Ivan sighed, "at least you came to me with an actual business offer. What else would I come to you with? I don't know. Some shite aimed at making me feel bad for being a decent, hard-working man, loyal to my liege. You know, your usual Manumit rot." "You don't have to answer right away," the man said, ignoring Ivan's remark. He then started leaving, but stopped halfway. "How's your boy doing?" "You keep him out of this," Ivan growled. "Tell him his uncle says hi." The Manumit smiled one last time and walked off into the dark. Ivan went straight home and kept looking over his shoulder on the way there. Their house was quiet, as it usually was at this hour, and yet today it gave him an eerie feeling. A quick sip of wine straight from the bottle did help a bit, but Ivan decided to check in on little Anton anyway, just in case. The boy was asleep, his breathing shallow but calm. He was a little pale, Ivan could see it even in the dim light of the moon, but that was just the way he had been recently. And just when Ivan was about to leave, he noticed it. A strip of bandage at Anton's neck, at the side. It was dark, as if blood-soaked. "Don't wake him up," he heard Maria whispering right behind him. Ivan turned around. "What happened?" "With what?" He pointed at Anton and then at his own neck. "Oh, that!" Maria waved her hand. "He tried to climb on the roof with the other boys and fell. It's not as bad as it looks." "The roof?" Ivan raised his eyebrow. "He's afraid of heights." "That's probably why he fell." She paused for a moment. "How did it go with the contract?" "The contract? Ah, yes, good. Tell me more." "In the morning." Maria went to sleep, but Ivan could not. He spent the rest of the night beside Anton's bed, watching the window and idly turning a small silver crucifix in his fingers. It was the one relic he had hidden after Valkyrie took over. But nothing happened except for this one time when Anton woke up from his sleep and asked, "Is he gone?" "Who?" Ivan leaned over him. "The bad man. Is he gone?" "You mean your uncle? You saw him today?" But Anton closed his weary eyes and drifted back to sleep.
I wonder if it was a happy dream or a nightmare.
Surely.
You guys have any questions?
Well, yeah, I kind of have a question. First of all, maybe you could tell us a bit, well, people of the internet, about Manumits.
Who are the Manumits?
The Manumits are the rebels who are rebelling against the Valkyrie, and they are considered a threat by the Valkyrie, so they are hunted down, and it's a real act of bravery to become a Manumit. But it's also a life of constantly, watching over your shoulder, and not everyone has the guts to actually do that. So I think they are very interesting because of that. That they have their lives, their regular jobs, and then they have to live those, double lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like people of Vale Songora are kind of stuck between two kinds of loyalties, right? The loyalty to the new knyaz and the new government of the valley, and the rebels, right? So
Yeah, because that's what I find particularly interesting. That our villains, the vampires, the Valkyrie, they are, of course, the blood-sucking monsters, but then they are not, 100% evil. They help people by curing the plague. Their blood has these miraculous features, and they pose to be, in general, more just than the previous rulers. But then there's this, layer beneath.
Nasty business of
Yeah.
drinking blood.
But they are quite appealing to a lot of people, and I think that's how evil operates sometimes in the real world. That they are not, monsters per se, but they try to, tell you that they're actually a valid option, right?
Yeah.
But judging by the thinly veiled threats, you can also say that Manumits can be quite ruthless as well. That that they are fighting the good fight, but it seems that if you're not on their side, you better move away, or pay the price.
I'd say they try every option they have. And sometimes it's a gray area, and that's also quite interesting. That there is not this, good and evil and black and white options, but everything has their yin and yang side.
And I'm quite happy with how morally ambiguous the world of the Blood of Dawnwalker turned out, and how multifaceted and layered our antagonists are. And I wonder what players will think about them when they get
which
to
side
yes,
you want
exactly.
to pick.
Okay, well, I think that leaves me. So if you don't mind, I'll read my short story, and the title is Newfound Wealth. The door to Mladen's bedroom opened with a loud creak, waking the innkeeper up. "What is it?" he groaned, bleary-eyed. Kresimir, his son, stepped into the chamber holding a lit candle. "There's customers," said the boy. "Tell them we are closed for the night." Mladen rolled over to his other side. "It's Samo and his crew. Could be the Pope himself, I don't give a crap. Said he will buy everything we have in stock if we open the door now." Bullshit. Mladen was growing impatient with the conversation. Samo's broke. I thought so too, but look. Kresimir fished something out of a pocket and laid it out in his open palm. It was small, round, and glimmered like gold. It was gold. Mladen shot out of his bed as if something had bitten him. "What are you waiting for? Let him in," he barked, pulling on his tights. "And get the mugs out, quick!" A moment later, the inn was buzzing like a beehive on the first warm day of the year. Booming voices echoed off the thatched roof. The smell of fried tripes and stewed cabbage filled the room. Samo sat at a table in the center, surrounded by his kin and friends, a sausage in one hand, a bottle of mead in the other. He swept his eyes around the inn as if he owned the place. Everything to your satisfaction? Asked Mladen, somewhat annoyed. Courteous entertainment, said Samo. Oi, Kresimir, he yelled, tossing the innkeeper's son another golden coin. Go get Reva. Tell him to bring his balalaika. We're celebrating. Kresimir was gone in the blink of an eye. A gust of cold air blew in as the door shut behind him. And what's the occasion, if you don't mind me asking? Inquired Mladen. Why? Samo smiled broadly, revealing his crooked, yellowed teeth. My newfound wealth, of course. This gave the innkeeper pause. He was so mesmerized by the man's gold, so greedy for it, that he didn't ask himself where it had all come from. Not until now. Found where, exactly? He said, arms across his chest. You wouldn't like to know, laughed Samo. You didn't steal it, did you? Mladen pressed on. The knyaz didn't look fondly on thieves, or those who accepted their loot as payment. Bah! Samo lifted his arms in mock offense. Who do you take me for? I'm a good Christian. Mladen had a thing or two to say to that. There were well-known instances of Samo's running afoul of the Ten Commandments, but just then the doors to the inn swung wide open. A small silhouette filled the dorm frame. A man wrapped tightly in a greasy sheepskin, his beard fluttering wildly in the wind. Dragutin, the oldest man in the village. He stepped inside, and Kresimir followed right behind. Kresik, Samo shook his head. I sent you to bring in the bard, and you come back with an old fart? The room erupted with laughter. I meant to do like you asked, I did, started the innkeeper's son, his cheeks aflush. But Dragutin, the old man cut him off. Your gold, where it's from? Ha! Another curious fellow. Samo slapped his thigh, pretending to be amused. What difference does it make? Gold's gold. And that's that. Did you go to the barrows? Asked the old man, his voice urgent. Suddenly, the room fell silent. Samo shifted in his chair. And what if I did? He shot back, trying to sound tough. I told you so many times. Yes, you and your fables. Samo rolled his eyes. Horned men in the mountains, winged spirits in the woods. You'd better tell us what lives in the outhouses too. Am I right, lads, eh? This time, no one laughed. Dragutin sat across Samo, staring him in the eyes. The young man had trouble meeting his gaze. Inside the barrow, were there any paintings? Asked the old man in a low voice, almost a whisper. Maybe. Did any of them show a woman with the face of a spider? Are you drunk, Grandpa? Samo tried to laugh him off. You're not making much sense. Answer me. I didn't look closely. Dragutin leaned over the table, his dark eyes smoldering with rage. Was her skin covered with signs? He demanded, like the ones we found on the stones in the bogs. The youngster didn't answer, but the sweat beading up on his forehead was enough of a tell. Villagers started slinking away, their ales unfinished. I've not spent much of it, said Samo, his voice wavering now. I can put it back where we found it. Fool, spat Dragutin. That's not how you settle debts with barrow lords. Well, tell me what to do then. The old man just shook his head in pity, and then he took out a long, jagged knife. That's
My
that.
first thought
Yeah.
was that the gold was fake, but now I'm more worried that the gold is severely cursed.
Might be. Who
Doom
knows?
gold,
That might be the
so to
case.
speak. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any questions or thoughts or any tidbit about the world that comes to mind when you hear it?
I think that whenever the topic is the old and the buried, your eyes just light up.
Yes, they do.
And this whole deeper layer of our lore is just your thing,
That's
isn't
my
it?
sweet spot. Yeah, so you guys all know it, but good people on the internet might not. that I'm an archaeologist by training, and I love infusing the past into the world that we are creating, and kind of layer it and create stories that hark back to the old times, because I think there's something utterly fascinating about times immemorial and how people used to make sense of the world. Even though Vale Sangora is a medieval world, there are places that date to times way back, and I always wanted to kind of make these places really mysterious, like really intriguing. And I really can't wait for players to explore these places and try to make sense of them, because we aren't giving them direct answers. You have to compare, a fresco in this grave with a book you found in this bookstore right there, and maybe a piece of gossip you heard as you were walking through a village. So yeah, all this deep, unsettling past is something that I'm really excited about showing to the world and sharing with players.
Yeah, and this ancient force, the spider woman, like she didn't sound like she didn't seem to be a Vrakir, right? It was something else. So there's more in our stories than just the Vrakiri, right?
That's a good point, and it's probably something worth emphasizing, that even though vampires, as we call them in our kind of lore, Vrakiri, are central to this story, because these swept in and took over this little nook of the world, there are other monsters to be met, and some are to be fought, some are to be befriended, and a lot of them are to be feared.
Right, but this is one of the aspects that I really like about our game, that, and this really fits into the whole open-ended story and the open world, that on the surface it's just a story about a boy trying to save his family, about Cohen trying to overthrow, dark vampire overlord. But if the players want to, they can really sightsee the valley. They can try to look into nooks and crannies and find a lot about some deep lore that we do not really explain.
Yeah.
They have to, try to put all those things together, the puzzle. And I, for once, I really hope and I'm looking forward to seeing all those, threads on Reddit, on Discord, and so on, about people saying things like, okay, so I found this relic or this fresco or anything, and what the hell does it mean? Yeah, can't wait for that.
Yeah, as you can tell, we are very excited about the game. We've spent the past 4 and a bit years working on.
So
yeah, and we are so excited that soon we'll get to share it with you and hear your thoughts. I hope we managed to whet your appetites with our stories, give you more insight into the world we created and the kind of stories that you might encounter as you explore it. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, we can't wait to share the game with you soon. Thanks.
Have a good
See
one.
ya.